Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. It's summertime here and with all the warmth and rain we've been having, the garden is going berserk. So much so it's going to take a whole week to get it under control. I'm going to be publishing daily videos during the week so you can join me and see all the mulching, clearing, planting, harvesting, compost making, all the things it takes to make a garden great. So for day one, the first area of the garden we're going to tackle is just here in my snow pea bed that's going to be turned into a cucumber bed shortly, and also just along the edge of the garden, my comfrey patch. Now I've been mentioning in a couple of recent videos that I need to be doing the comfrey, so today's the day I'm finally going to knock this comfrey down, and that's what we're going to be doing first. I'm starting down this end of the pathway because I can clear the comfrey out a bit easier, but already I've found some volunteer plants that I have to move. They're little zinnia seedlings that are self-sown, and zinnias are so beautiful that I don't like to waste any. Even if I dig them up, put them in a pot and give them to a friend, they're not wasted. So I'm going to be doing that first before we get started with cutting all the comfrey. So there's plenty of roots on that seedling, so that should get going well. Now I did wreck one of the seedlings, but I got a second one out of there as well. Now that my little seedlings are out the way, we can get started with the comfrey. And I'm also going to be clearing some of these finished artichoke flowers as well. But I've got my loppers for those ones. Now when clearing comfrey plants, I like to have long sleeves on because the leaves, they look nice and soft, but if you look at them closely, they have these little fine needles on them, which really scratch up your arm and leave you quite uncomfortable by the end of a session with comfrey. So my arms are protected today, so I don't have to worry about that at all. By clearing all the comfrey, it helps to clear some of my paths around the place, but it also gives access to a bit more space and light for these little artichoke plants, the little pups that grow. Once this flower has finished doing its job of flowering and probably creating lots of seeds in here, the plant sends up new shoots to sort of do the cycle again. So it's good to be able to get some sun to these young plants. I'll just carefully cut these out so not to damage those younger plants. Now I do have a video on transplanting artichokes and using these pups and separating them out as separate plants, so I'll leave a link to that. I've just cut this artichoke flower head down, and you can see there's a new little pup just forming there. Although there's no signs of life anywhere else, it will regrow again. They are a perennial plant. I think they last sort of 5-7 years. I'm not too sure about that. But they certainly last more than one season in my climate. Now I'm halfway along with clearing this comfrey. And I've got my big pile here, which is going to be heading off to the compost. I'll be making a new compost during the week at some point. And I don't mind throwing all these flower heads into the compost because any seed should be affected with the heat and stop them germinating. But the comfrey remaining, I would like to use as a mulch in my tomato bed, which I'll be doing tomorrow once I've tied up the plants. I can mulch them. But what I will be doing is just cutting off all of these flower heads first, and that will be sent off to the compost, and then that will just leave all this leafy goodness to be a nitrogen mulch for my tomatoes. So what that means is I'll just get the flower stalks and separate those out before cutting all the leaves. It doesn't actually take too long. So that lot will be heading off to the compost, and that leaves all these leaves for mulch. we've got some bees making the most of these flowers before they do get composted. Before I cut those leaves, I'm going to move all of these flowers out the way so that they don't get mixed up with the seeded lot. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that here until I build the compost. Now, comfrey does decompose fairly quickly, so I will need to work pretty fast getting my compost together to make the most of these comfrey leaves. And now to get these ones down. All right. Well, I think the comfrey is down. It looks a bit of a mess, but I'll be tidying that up tomorrow when I mulch all of my tomatoes. So I'm not going to put any energy into that just for the moment. But this will soon look beautiful, just like the comfrey at the other end of the garden. So now we can move on to what will be a future cucumber bed, and also I've got some little seedlings like lettuce and spinach and maybe some basil to add into here. So we've got to get this cleared up, and I've got to get all these little pot plants out the way that I've been putting right next to the tap to remind me to water them. So we'll start by getting all of those moved. So if we have a look at this garden first, things we want to keep, there are still some snow pea plants that are producing. Some have definitely died off, so it might be tricky getting those out. It might pull the other ones down, so we'll have to see how we go. Also in here are some seeding Swiss chard that we don't really need, and various weeds. There's a zinnia that I want to keep, and I did plant 2 cucumbers ahead of time. So we want to preserve those, and they're what I want to start to run up this trellis. Now I did have some parsley going to seed here as well, so we've got lots of parsley plants. So we'll have to decide on the go which of those we'll want to keep. Now on the other side I've got a beautiful echinacea which will be staying. The California poppy, well I might try and keep that and just plant in and around it. I've just been in for a bit of lunch and to grab my hat because it is warming up out here. We're going to get a lot of this cleared out, and then I hope to get a layer of compost on top. This is a parsley plant. It looks like it's seeding, and we've certainly got enough parsley in this garden at the moment, so I'll be getting rid of that. Getting rid of the weeds. Sometimes when your gardens get overgrown, you forget what you've planted. This is another zinnia plant here amongst all the parsley. Now we've got a bit of running grass here. This is where I had all the pots with plants in it sitting, and it was hiding all of this grass. So I really need to get all of this pulled up so it doesn't take over this area. It does actually pull up fairly easy most of the time if you get it early enough. I'm thinking I might leave all of this dead snow pea stems in place because it does actually hold up some of the living snow peas, and I still am getting a few, so I don't want to destroy my chances at a snow pea harvest. So we'll leave that until it all dies off. Both sides have been cleared of the weeds and the plants that I didn't want. I did have 3 of these California poppies in, so I've taken out 2 and left 1. and there are little seedlings sort of scattered in amongst it, so there'll be more plants growing soon. But this is on the corner, so I'm not too worried. It still gives plenty of sort of planting space in amongst that. And then on the other side, less planting space, but I don't mind having all of that parsley there. I can interplant between all of that. And here's my 2 cucumber plants. I'm just going to tie those up before adding some compost to these beds. There we go. Well, that's got them heading up into the right direction anyway. I'll be keeping an eye on them and making sure I kind of wind them through if need be, or do up a bit more tying just to make sure that they get going up this trellis. And now to the compost that I'm going to use. This is the mushroom compost that I've bought in. And this one here is my own compost. Now I'm using both because I figure, well, they're good organic material, both of them, and they vary. And they also vary in the diversity of organisms within them. So it kind of adds a lot more to your soil if you can add in different materials like this. So I'm going to add a bucket of each onto both sides of my garden bed. Now, something I didn't mention before I've added this compost on was that I made sure I moved any of the wood chips that had been kicked onto the garden bed by birds back onto the path. And that's just to make sure that when I do go to plant plants and dig into the soil, that there's less chance that the wood chips can drop down into the soil and be buried. They're only a problem for robbing nitrogen from soil if they're buried into the soil. So I always make sure I've moved that well out of the way before adding these amendments. And you just kind of spread around the compost, and I will be putting a couple of handfuls in right next to where my cucumbers are, just to make sure that they've got plenty of nutrition and support. And our garden beds are ready. The seedlings I've got today to put in are some mixed lettuces, some rocket. These have all been a bit nibbled by caterpillars while I've been raising them, and there's one on there right now. And they really need to get in the ground, and these are a few spinach plants. So I'm going to be adding these to the garden bed. But I'll be waiting till this evening to plant these just to reduce the shock. It's quite warm at the moment, and it'll be a lot cooler later in the evening and much better suited to planting these little plants. Well, that's my gardening done for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please make sure you subscribe and hit the notify button so that you'll be made aware when I upload videos, including tomorrow's video, which is on tying up the tomatoes, mulching them with the comfrey. I think I'm going to be clearing the broad beans and maybe planting out some corn. And who knows what else I can squeeze in. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and be sure to watch tomorrow's as well. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.